Hi, everybody. Sorry, I had to turn off a speaker. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show, where we watch old 16mm films. And that one we've got from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. They were going to throw these films out, and so they called me and said, "Hey, do you want these?" And I have no idea what that experiment is all about. It just said written on the can, bubble bed outs. So they didn't make it to the final cut of the scintillating film about bubble beds. And the film was silent, of course, and I'm sure this is one that there was narration that was added later. But thanks for joining us today. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Taryn, I'm sorry that July is so bad for you. She's one of our followers in the comments. July is bad for me just because I don't do well in the heat. And we did a project over the weekend that is related to that painting right there, where it was very hot and I got bit by a bunch of mosquitoes. And it just kind of shows me that I need to be in an underground cave during the summer months because I just don't bode well. But enough about that. Let's figure out, what is space? I mean, really, what is space? Enjoy.
These radio antennas, called dishes, are aimed at distant stars. Radio signals that originate like static far out in space cause the sound you are hearing. The moving needle on the graph is making a record of radio signals received from distant stars. This is space. But there is also space close by. You need space to sit down. You need space to stand up. You need space to lie down. You need space to run. In fact, everything you do takes space. Of course, there are times when it seems that there is empty space. But even when things are crowded, there's usually plenty of space close by. Let's take a trip away from the Earth and find out how much space there is. We can start our trip away from the Earth aboard a helicopter. Then we'll change to a rocket. Switch to imagination, backed up by knowledge man has collected about space. We have to travel some 240,000 miles through space away from the Earth before we meet another object in space, the Moon. Now we're millions of miles away from the Earth. We have to travel about 93 million miles away from the Earth before we meet the next closest object in space, the Sun. Now we're about 23 trillion miles away from the Earth. The Earth is too small to be seen from here. The Sun itself is little brighter than the other stars. And here is our next nearest neighbor in space, the star Proxima Centauri. Actually, we have hardly even begun our trip through space. As we move farther from the Earth, we find that Proxima Centauri and our Sun are only two stars in a great collection of stars. This collection of stars is called a galaxy. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy, and in space there are billions of galaxies. Here is a galaxy similar to ours, as photographed through a telescope. It's located nearly 2 million light years away from the Earth. A light year is a measure of distance, not time. It's the distance light can travel in a year. That distance is about 6 trillion miles. The most distant galaxy we can see through our existing telescopes is about 6 million light years away from the Earth. And there's no reason to believe that space doesn't extend farther than that. So you can see that there's a great deal of space. I wonder, have we explored all the space there is? For example, how about the space in that rock you're sitting on? The rock seems solid. But does that mean that there's no space in it? This container is filled solid with marbles. But does that mean there's no space in it? There's plenty of space for some BBs. The BBs fit into the space between the marbles. Is there any space left in the container now? Yes, there's space for some water. The water fits into the space between the BBs. Now the container seems to be filled solid. It seems that there is no more space in it. But is that really true? The two small bottles are filled with water. It's colored to make it easier to see. The bottles are filled full to these lines. The two small bottles fill to their lines, fill the large bottle to its line. Now one bottle is filled with colored water and the other with alcohol. Where did that space come from? It must have come from space inside the water or the alcohol. There must be some space inside these materials, otherwise they would have filled the big bottle. How about the space between things? For example, the space between these boys playing catch. Is that space empty? Not exactly. There are baseballs passing through it. How about the space between this searchlight and the place where its light hits? Is that space empty? No, it's filled with light. Heat travels from the sun down to us. And to get here, it travels through 93 million miles of space. The radio signals that make this static have traveled through billions of light years of space to reach this monitoring station on Earth. What if someday, somewhere, an antenna aimed at a distant star picked up a signal like this? What would such a signal coming from far out in space mean? Would it be static?
That kind of took me off guard. I was eating a salad. Man, I love the BBs and the marbles. Something about that visually just feels good. I don't know why. I don't know why it resonates with me, but so behind me is the Sintel film scanner, and I just realized I haven't changed this yet. Got a film setup, and that's one of the cool things about doing this is that we get to pull films off our shelves in the archive and show them to you as we digitize them. This one's called Speeding, and what's written on the can, it says there's some water damage at the beginning, but it does eventually clear up. So here's Speeding. Enjoy.
There we go. Got one. Very nice. Traffic 1700 block South Lincoln, 0 John Paul King.
One second. Lost tension. Whoa. Seriously lost tension. Give me just a sec. Try, and if it doesn't work, then we'll just move on. It's kind of the nature of doing stuff live.
Well, I've got you at 51 and a 40 mile on radar, Mr. Schiavelli.
Sorry everybody. Let's learn about earthquakes below.
Out of the fog of a chilly morning's dawn, a great city shakes off sleep and drowsily comes to life, to begin another day like so many others in its history. And yet the city lives with a constant threat, the remote but real possibility of a great disaster. San Francisco. A glory, a prize, a sparkling jewel of a city, where the very air seems to vibrate with a sense of life. Like all great cities, it has drawn together men and women from many places, many backgrounds. 700,000 people live here. During the working day, that number swells with the bustle of over 1 million. And yet, a specter walks these streets shoulder to shoulder with the people. For San Francisco lives nearby one of the most severe earthquake faults in all the world. July 1972. A new kind of satellite leaps toward orbit. A satellite designed to keep an eye on the Earth, take its pulse and its picture. In the years that follow, the satellite radios back vast quantities of data that enrich our understanding of subjects from pollution to mining, from fishing to farming to flood control. Could it as well help bring a better understanding of earthquakes? That was a subject for which the spacecraft held little promise, but time would tell a different story. The satellite looks down on an Earth that is constantly changing, as it has changed through all time. Enormous pressures from deep within shove against the Earth's rocky crust. The ground gives way, bending to a new shape. And still the pressure continues, until at last the rock splits apart, usually along an already weakened area called a fault line. Periodically, the people of California get a gruesome reminder of what can happen when the Earth suddenly moves. San Francisco, 1906, 5:17 a.m. It's only been lately that scientists have begun to understand what an earthquake really is.
An earthquake is simply the shaking of the ground due to natural causes. This little escarpment that I'm walking along here came into existence.
Dr. Clarence Allen, professor of geology and geophysics at the California Institute of Technology, tells of a recent quake.
And we can actually see down here where my hand is the actual fault plane that extends many miles down into the earth where the earthquake actually started. Now, what causes earthquakes? This green strip represents a valley carved along the San Andreas Fault, and these three black strips represent three fences that were built across the fault many years ago, fences which gradually become deformed or bent because of the horizontal movement of the valley walls at a rate of perhaps 1 or 2 inches every year.
After years of movement, the rocks finally yield to the enormous stress and break apart. This is an earthquake. Earthquakes don't just happen on dry land. They happen as well on the ocean floor. The rocks crack under the enormous stress until one section of the ocean floor springs suddenly upward. The water above it is thrust up the same way. This vertical wave erupts to the surface and begins racing toward shore at an alarming speed, up to 500 miles an hour. Nearing the shore, where the ocean bottom climbs upward, the water begins to push upward into a giant wall, sometimes as high as a 10-story building. This is the dreaded tsunami, or tidal wave. Earthquakes have happened in every state of the United States, but the most vulnerable is California. The San Andreas Fault runs almost the whole length of the state, and another shorter one brackets the Bay Area of San Francisco. In addition to the major faults, there is a whole slew of lesser ones, an entire system of them. Any one could be the site of an earthquake. Scientists are racing against time to find a way of predicting when and where the next major quake will strike. There was no warning in 1971. San Fernando Valley outside Los Angeles.
That's my mother.
You want to go back? It's about 7 foot down there. When the light comes in, we can still see.
All right.
Oh, that's okay.
Come on.
Yeah.
Been laying down all morning.
It's your daughter, honey. Right here waiting for you.
Here's your daughter, Ellen.
Sit down now. Just bend your knees slowly.
Wait a minute.
Slowly.
Where's Heidi? Heidi's with Jim. Huh? No, he took her with her, and the dogs are down in that Orland.
It's all right.
It's okay.
We desperately need to know more about earthquakes to discover the secret of predicting them in time to give warning. NASA is working to support earthquake research being done by the U.S. Geological Survey. The Landsat satellite, formerly called ERTS, has been yielding some valuable new information.
Ron, let's see if we can identify some of these faults you found on the aircraft imagery on Earth.
All right, Bob, on the aircraft image, we've got about 3 miles of a fault here. If we look at this on the Earth's image, we can extend it to about 60 miles. More exciting is one down here on the Earth's image, a very major structure, cuts across the whole mountain range. We've never known about it before until we had the Earth's image.
Entire fault systems revealed for the first time by satellite. Knowledge like this may one day help to save many thousands of lives. Satellites are playing another even more important role in earthquake research in this NASA project toward developing a prediction capability. 2 stations like this have been erected 500 miles apart on opposite sides of the San Andreas Fault. From each station, a laser beam is aimed at a satellite overhead and the reflected signals picked up. Because the satellite position is known very accurately, the researchers can compute the distance between the 2 ground stations with great precision. Comparing the readings over a period of time, they should be able to determine how much the ground is moving and how fast. In another project, NASA researchers are using radio signals from quasar stars outside our galaxy to detect these minute Earth movements. Scientists hope that applying space technology to this earthly problem may one day enable them to say, here the stress has reached its limit. Here, about such and such a day, an earthquake will occur. But today, no one can say when an earthquake might rumble San Francisco. Possibly not for many, many years, or possibly much sooner. Will we have learned in time how to predict and give warning so the city can be evacuated? Or will we even perhaps have learned how to prevent earthquakes? The race is on. The people of this delightful city prefer to put the threat out of mind. And yet, the threat is always present. Each year, scientists find new, unexpected uses for satellites. How magnificent if this product of man's advanced technology could help show the way toward bringing an end to the age-old, sudden, striking terror of mankind. Till that bright day, satellites high above will keep watch on the earthquake below.
One of my earthquake experiences is related to film directly, in that I was in Culpeper, Virginia, where the National Audiovisual Center of the Library of Congress is located, and it's located in a former, I think it's a coal mine. I'm not sure. It's a really small, but it's basically in the side of a little mountain, Mount Pony, and we were there digitizing home movies for the Center for Home Movies, and we broke for lunch, and so we were in downtown Culpeper, and things started shaking a little bit, and I was like, that's weird. Is that a subway, like, going past, or a train? And then I kind of noticed, like, bricks were falling off of chimneys outside, and some pots and pans in the kitchen and the diner fell. I was like, huh, So I like texted, or I like sent a message to Facebook, say, did anybody feel that? And then I was like, oh, you know what? I need to call Katrina and say like, hey, I just went through this and I'm okay. But then that's when everybody on the East Coast was calling and texting everybody else on the East Coast. And so I wasn't able to do it for hours. And I got in trouble. Katrina was very mad that I sent this message, but then didn't really try to reach out to her. But yeah, that was my experience. And in honor of that, here's a film that's from the Library of Congress. It was part of our project. I was digitizing other stuff for a sponsored film guide, and this is by our friends Alcoa, and it's about color and texture in aluminum finishes. Enjoy.
Please don't look for printed titles on this film. Sidestepping the old question of what is good design, we've decided merely to say to you that this is a film about finishes for aluminum. The film is designed by Tracy Ward, Wheaton Galantine, Richard Bagley, Frank Lewis Eisenman, Ernest Buchanan, Carlo Arcamone, D. and Thomas Fox, and Walter Abel. The film has been produced by On Film Incorporated for Alcoa. If there's a subject that everyone seems to have an opinion about, it's how a product should look.
Fine, but can't you do something to dress it up a bit?
I asked my wife, and she said we should make it pink.
Now, find his way back to basic materials. A man with design problems, a man with an eye to the future, has no time to waste. This aluminum, this obliging metal, which can be worked by every means known to the metalworking industry, can also be finished in more ways than any other metal. What solutions to your design problems does it offer? Aluminum is a functional metal. But what textures can you specify? And how about color? Starting with this workable metal, how can its very workability be used to give it texture and pattern? Alcoa can tell you that aluminum and its alloys can easily be press-formed into any design, rolled into many patterns, perforated or expanded, extruded to almost any contour, brushed to a fine texture. From doorknobs to buildings, texture on aluminum depends upon your point of view. different settings? How can it be textured in relation to other textures? If you want a matte finish, you can etch it. Sandblast it. Buff it for luster. Or bright dip it. You can texture aluminum's surface in almost unlimited ways. Make it highly reflective. You can buff it, burnish it, and brighten it. For aluminum is a medium for brilliance, in itself and in other materials. In keeping brilliance or texture, aluminum has an advantage over other metals. By anodizing, you can protect it without changing its original surface appearance. When aluminum is anodized, billions of submicroscopic oxide cells start to form. They form from the metal itself and grow to give a hexagonal cell structure of durable aluminum oxide, an integral part of the metal surface. And since the anodized surface reproduces the original surface, the metal retains whatever texture you have given it. With a different solution and treatment, the oxide cells will form even thicker walls. The result is called a hard coating, very resistant to wear and erosion. A further unique quality of aluminum is that when it is anodized, each cell of its oxide coating has a tiny pore which accepts dyes and mineral pigments. And this leads to the whole subject of color. In addition to color by anodizing, color may be applied on plain or anodized aluminum. It can be roller coated, silk screened with paints and inks, or with stop-off as a prelude to two-color anodizing. Whatever the method, aluminum is architectural colors which, being part of the metal, can't chip or peel away. You'll come across many colorful anodic finishes. you'll have a bright metallic sheen if you start with a smooth surface of the right alloy. And matte colors if you start with texture, or if you change the composition of the anodizing solution. Then there are porcelain finishes, highly resistant to mechanical and thermal shock. Many organic coatings can be applied when the surface is prepared correctly. Plastic coatings, paints, lacquers, and enamels. Aluminum is color. Aluminum is also function. When you are thinking not so much of appearance as of function, Alcoa can tell you about an aluminum landing gear with parts hard chromium plated for wear resistance. And the edge of this helicopter rotor blade hard coated to resist erosion. If for the application you have in mind, aluminum is the material, here are some other functional finishes. Cadmium plating makes this slide more easily. Pistons are immersion coated with tin or brass to reduce friction. For the same reason, this sole plate is buff smooth. For wear resistance, these parts are hard coated or plated. Reflectivity is increased by electrochemical treatment. Silver plating increases surface conductivity. For resistance to corrosion, there are chemical and electrochemical finishes. Porcelain provides function and appearance. These finishes and many more can be part of your consideration in designing for production. Let us tell you some of the ways these finishes can be mass-produced. The buffing which gives luster is mechanized whenever high rates of production are required. Aluminum is anodized with fully automatic equipment. Parts can be made from coiled strip, anodized on a continuous machine as long as 2 football fields. Architectural panels or extrusions are anodized in tanks the size of boxcars. To get the finish you want, think finish at the beginning. Here's where we try to answer your questions about finishes. We can show you that on aluminum alloys, the key to electroplating lies in the surface preparation. The natural oxide film must first be replaced with a film of zinc. Then you can electroplate the surface with copper or any other metal. We'll tell you that Alcoa has developed anodic processes under the trade name Alumilite that will assure specific anodic finishes for any application. You can specify pattern in combination with Alumilite. Or you can specify extrusions to be buffed bright and Alumilite finished. Colored Alumilite coatings as a foundation for further painting and lacquering. Since some mill products can be anodized before forming, we'll tell you the factors which control flexibility when aluminum is pre-finished, as in this application. We'll show you various shades of colored Alumilite coatings. We'll show you texture from controlled grain structure. Let you explore other possibilities. When it comes to finishes, Alcoa's tradition is, have the facts. Alcoa's philosophy is, try it.
Okay, so they cheated and there were a little bit of credits at the end. But yeah, what a fascinating film. Really trying to sell the design aspects of aluminum, and specifically in, it seems like industrial structures more than anything. Which, you know, it's funny. So if you ever go to Pittsburgh, which is where U.S. Steel was based, there is an Alcoa building which has an amazing kind of finish on the outside of it. The windows are just weird, kind of shaped. It's really striking. I don't think Alcoa is there anymore, but yeah, it's a pretty great structure to see. Pittsburgh's pretty great in general too. It's kind of coming back from its Rust Belt kind of time period in the 70s and 80s. Thanks for tuning in today. Sorry about the scanner difficulties. The film was sticky, and it was also twisted in a way that it wasn't really connecting with one of the sprocketed wheels. This scanner uses sprocketed wheels to move the film through. It doesn't use a little claw to do it, so it's pretty delicate on film. But if the film isn't connecting, then it doesn't work. So that's why it kept crapping out. Anyhow, thanks JF for contributing a great donation of coffee. He went to ko-fi.com/avgeeks. Another way that you can say thank you is by hitting the thumbs up button, smashing the like button, hitting the whatever bell, all these different ways in your social media thing to say, yes, I like it. You can also go to avgeeks.com. I'm experimenting with a new thing there. I have a channel where I'm showing and adding new content all the time, and it's a constant flow of AV Geek stuff. So it's lunchtime shows, it's individual little short films, and if it gets going pretty good, then I might start adding more stuff that I probably won't be showing on the lunch show, and maybe some other themed things. So go to avgeeks.com and check that out. It's going to be running 24/7. And right now it's pulling from YouTube content, but I'm going to work on making it to where I can have more stuff. And then at some point I might add advertising, both for AV Geek stuff and for other like advertising that will help pay for the channel, because that ain't cheap. But thanks for tuning in today. We will see you again tomorrow. As always, please rewind and love each other. And love yourself. Keep cool. If you're feeling down and overwhelmed by the summer heat, try to reach out to somebody. Just kind of say like, hey, I'm struggling. Let's go to a public pool and hang out, or let's go walk through the frozen food sections at a grocery store, just to get out and try to be cool. Everybody take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.